Well, welcome business leaders, indeed agency principals and or directors, general managers, chief operation officers, and indeed chief executive officers, CEOs to CREAMstream. This is our second edition, and last week we the week before last, I should say, so we're on every fortnight, and we got the show off to a flying start and have definitely got that committed up onto our YouTube channel, which I openly recommend that you do subscribe to. If you do happen to miss one of these presentations, well, then you can look at it back at your leisure. I do ask, and I'm more than happy for you to on-share and get other people to subscribe to those platforms, other leaders that you might know or business owners. The more we've got to share, the more this can actually work to our advantage. So feel free to on-share it. And again, I openly invite you to get any questions that you have across to me. The email address is relatively simple. I'll repeat it at the end of the show, but it's Mark with a K at corporatemanager.com.au. I also really do encourage you to jump on board with our Facebook group called CREAMstream. Lots of goodies there as well. Not much further ado, let's get on with the show. The subject matter. So this is session 2. This is, of course, about the corporatization of your business, and it doesn't matter where you're at. Today, I'll be talking a lot about that. Alluding to startup agencies. It might just be 2 of you on the journey. As I know, one of my good friends, Justin Hicks, who's also just inherited a business, so he's moving in, and moving into the ownership role can be quite daunting. You could have a small or medium business. Doesn't matter where you are. Sometimes they're established and you want to grow them even further. And I'm always reminded, I go all the way back, Andrew Coronis of Coronis Realty. Or the rest is pretty self-explanatory these days, but he came to me when we would have been early 2000s, something like that, the best part of 20 years ago. A couple of very simple initial questions, and I said to him, you want to begin with the end in mind, mate? He said, well, I said, what do you mean? I said, what is it that you're trying to do? And that's the theme of today, about beginning with the end in mind. So getting a good handle on where you are driving your business to. There's no point in trying to jump into the helm and drive that business, and it'll be even harder or more difficult to rally people around you if you're, as the leader, not extremely clear on where it is that you're looking to go. So last week we talked about the 7 essentials, the essential elements you need in every real estate business. We started with talking about clients and how you secure them and how you procure them. I'll go through that as it relates, especially in and around STEAM, our sales team leadership product. We talked about leadership from, again, sales team leaders, but of course from you as the CEO, the driver of the business, the navigator of sorts, that you are very clear in articulating your vision and everything else that goes around it. Very difficult for salespeople to salespeople, even sales team leaders, your administrative team, your property management team, and any of the other income streams that you might be aspiring to building or even managing right now, if they're not clear on the vision, that's where the problem creeps in. We also talked about management. I'll be alluding to that today as well. Salespeople, no doubt, I keep saying this to the leaders of each business. They say, I'm not real sure about progressing from sales. And I said, well, why don't you just get into the recruitment side? And they said, yeah, but I enjoy sales. I said, no bigger sale than selling a salesperson into your business. And if that salesperson is capable of commanding, anywhere from $750,000 in gross commission income all the way through to, a couple of million, and you've got the structure that is quite profitable. So like, for example, if you've got a 30% margin and you sell someone in that's going to bring in 1.8, effectively, you've just made a $600,000 sale in what we call CREAM into the business. So the incentives there, it's just a learning field, and I'll be sharing loads of information around that, notwithstanding then we move in to CREAM, the training for this year and moving into next, as a lot of the COVID thing clears, is understanding how to recruit top performers for your business and making those sales and building the business around it. So we know that they're an essential element. We talked about marketing, and it's very, it's not just limited. It's not one dimensional anymore. Marketing is not just about getting people to promote properties or advertise properties, you know, getting people to pay or contribute or, you know, invest in marketing, which is quite often advertising, that horrible acronym that I was running through just the other day with some people, vendor paid advertising. You know, marketing permeates just about every facet of our businesses now, you know, whether it be in marketing for prospects, whether it be marketing presence, whether it be, you know, marketing for recruits and creating the right perception so that you do attract the right people into your business. This is also important. Technology, we talked about that, and I'll expand on that as we go through. One of the hacks, I believe, of businesses is thinking that technology does it for us. For so often I see with technology, you bring it into your business and that very technology complicates things, and this actually causes a negative impact, particularly on productivity and it running progressively. So we have to make sure that, you know, well past the wow factor of any technological advancement, how it is actually going to contribute to the overall prosperity, drive, and productivity of the business and how that works. And then last but by no means least, we talked about prosperity. This is going to continue on. You know, when I talk, it was only today that I was talking to a couple of startups, and they are on here today. Vasco Horta and Lorraine Dove, who are in Western Australia in the Perth market. They've got a startup that they've just amalgamated their businesses, and it's taking off fairly, you know, very well. But, you know, as I was saying to them, you know, you've got to focus around a prosperity doctrine. You've got to look at the equitable model and how you want that to augur in. Understanding, you know, at the time we're just talking about tax constraints and how they work in and around selling the capital or the goodwill of the business, and how you can affect that, you know, long term, and then in their case medium term, because they're older, to get to the point where you can have the choice to sell out, move out as it suits you. So that's what we talked about last week, and we related it to each of the other facets of the business. I just want to move in and talk about what we've been doing at Property Careers. So if you've got those sales associates, or you're looking for sales associates, you want to bring new people in at the early level that are out there prospecting and driving your prospecting arm. In the first instance, I openly implore you to take control of your prospecting, so much so that you talk about our origin system. So there's something that we will be talking about inside of STEAM, which is about our sales team leadership, but we're going to talk about the subject matter of that is called state of origin. We're going to start talking about how the company can wrestle control of the origin of listings and literally be referring them back into its own salespeople, thus making that whole department profitable in and around prospecting, which no one really wants to get involved in. So I ask you to have a look at that. But we're inside of Property Careers. What we've been doing with the young sales associates that are largely responsible for a lot of the prospecting arm is making sure that they understand that their orientation around prospecting is geared toward the motive, and that they are from there. In last week's session, we talked about how you make a connection, especially in and around what's going on with lockdown. So what we've had happening in and around lockdown is that we're servicing the clients so much so and bringing them in. So I'm teaching those young associates how to identify motive, how to understand motive, how to promote conversation around the motive. this leaves opportunities for advice and then pushing the product in there. So I've shown them how to do that, also how to build rapport, keeping the subject matter around the motive, the prospect's motive, their property, and the client themselves, not having salespeople babble on about themselves and thinking that this is actually promoting good rapport. And this, of course, has led, if doing this correctly, as lockdown starts to clear, because I keep saying the future arrives, invariably, those companies that do this successfully, as the dust settles, as it starts to clear, then owners will lean on those companies that have been giving them advice ahead of price. And this ultimately leads to listing presentations that are garnered by invitation, with the active property sellers inviting you down more so than solicitation. And I believe that solicitation is meeting with a dead end these days, and not least of which, if you push that hard down that avenue, invariably we find ourselves through desperate stakes of offering concessions around marketing and the like, or worse, going in and negotiating down on fee percentages. So we want to avoid that. In our sales trainer program, the major focus right now, and it looks like it's going to carry on for some time, has been around platforming, which is very similar to orientation, but more about the platforming of the presentation and making sure that has a direct correlation to a thing we call the Property Seller's Research Guide, which is setting up the parameter for which we run that listing presentation, and making sure that all of your product is consistent with your initial promise. And this, of course, is going to continue to attract more clients in, and you've got better control over how your products are sold. This does alleviate a lot of the scourge of fee discounting, as I just mentioned a moment ago, and helps us get on top of that. So that's important with our real estate rock stars. It's about, them on an advanced level, rather than thinking about creating a presentation which has this ideal of showing somebody something in a more advanced light, moving it into the space of what we call a listing education, where they're actually teaching sellers all of the nuances in and around listing and selling real estate, and why they should be focused on the professional capacity of a salesperson if they're looking at making a choice of agent, and how that can be most beneficial to them in the sales process. And let's face it, there is a massive difference between agents. The wrong perception out there is that all agents are going to get the same. Instead of actually accepting this, we're working very heavily on enhancing the relationship with property sellers by improving their professional capacity to educate. I had one on the line today where a salesperson received, after having done the listing presentation, or in his case, as we call it, a listing education, that the seller had written a letter back to him, and as it went through, they had openly said, "We want to list the property with you," then brought into being a whole bunch of other agents, and then went on to say, more or less, that some of the agents are offering better dispositions in and around fee percentages, and more importantly, that they're saying that they'll cover or give us the marketing. And this agent just was more focused on that. And I said, look at the opening sentence in the letter. They've said that they want to list with you. The rest is just semantics. All you've got to do is understand that question around fee, the question around marketing, can simply be, they just need you to explain to them how that works. So you need to qualify, is it an inquiry? Is it an attack? Or is it a request for a discount? And each of those has a different approach in the way it works out. Anyway, needless to say, we've got the listing coming on board. So Steve, who's on here now, you'd be very happy to hear that, mate. So one of your salespeople, we're going to get that one across the line and move forward with that as well. As it relates into STEAM, so with our sales team leaders, the last couple of weeks, we focused in the first instance, as I said to you, we're moving into figuring out how we can capture and literally turn your prospecting into an income stream. We've also started to talk about, well, the last couple of weeks, the week before last, I should say, very much there was a focus on the scoreboard, on making sure that you do have a control board in the office, that it is in public view, that salespeople, as we did last week, that they are very, very clear on their goals and their targets. This seems to be forgotten, and I don't know why. There's so many agencies where salespeople don't have the imposition of meeting particular KPIs, and indeed, as we say, goals are mandatory, and targets. So we put that in place, and we've got shown a lot of leaders how to get that scoreboard up there, how to get everyone focused on it, how it's focused around the productivity numbers, not so much concerned with the dollars that are come in. As I've always said, take care of the listings, get on top of those, and the dollars will take care of themselves. So that's all been interesting. I implore you to tune in if you can, as we start to talk about state of origin and how you wrestle control to create prospect flow in your business, so you've got a constant stream and you can predict them with clarity. So, even the last week the subject matter has been planning for the new month that we're about to go into. If you don't inside, particularly your sales business, if you're not running planning meetings that are preemptively or proactively controlling the productivity for the following month, therein lies your problem. So I, again, absolutely implore you to jump on top of that. Now to the subject matter of today. Some time ago, geez, it was nearly 5 years ago, there was an article as it related to, real estate business ownership, directed at principals in one of our industry magazines, where they were talking, or the author was pointing out the top 10 mistakes that real estate principals make with new businesses. And I was horrified, not least of which was the fact that this particular article was never negatively expressed. It says, like, these are the mistakes they made, rather than saying, well, why don't you give me some positive spin and tell me the essential things that I should do to succeed. But some of the things that are in there are like the wrong legal structure, burying your head in the sand on tax. These are all compliance issues. And yes, they've got to be paid attention to, but I can tell you right now, it just almost immediately reminds me of a topic, when I first started in the real estate business, and I had a business partner, and his first thing was to say that sort of stuff. We need to get a good bookkeeper. We need to have the right legal structure. We need to make sure that all those compliance issues are in place and our books are like squeaky whistle clean. We want to start that way to make sure that we end that way. I said, look, I don't want to put too much energy into that, because to be honest with you, I don't want to have the best set of books in town that suggest we're going broke. So my remedy for that might sound a little backyardish to you, but I just basically got a cardboard box and a passbook bank account from our bank. And I just ran a simple ideal around this. I said, we're just going to put all the money that we make from sales into that passbook account. Over here, all of the window-faced envelopes in those days, any envelope that came in the window face was typically an invoice or a bill. And I said, we'll put all the window-faced envelopes into this cardboard box. And I literally wrote on the outside of that box, window-faced envelopes. And I said, we'll just push all those aside, forget that. Let's just put all of our energy into listing properties for sale, hence the phrase GML. And when we make those sales, let's bank all the money, and all those envelopes will gather up. But when we get to a point where we've made a whole lot of sales and there's a whole lot of money in the bank, we'll open up the envelopes will take that mess to an accountant and say, we've got a whole lot of money. Can you fix this problem for us? And that worked brilliantly. So when I saw this, I just looked at it, I thought wrong legal structure, worry about tax, thinking that profit equals cash. I mean, I realized that that's a problem. But again, I just went, we'll just spend as little money as possible. Let's just put all the money in there and spend absolutely nothing and be completely frugal with everything. Hence the reason, even when we re-engineered Prospector, I looked at it and we had no money and we had to engage creativity. So when I redid Prospector, when my first charter was to say, no money, let's look at the whole prospecting equation, but not give ourselves the luxury of throwing money at the problem. We won't not throw any money at it, but let's be frugal. Let's engage our creativity as we focus on what we've got to do to make that work. Another one that they had there is not knowing your break-even point. Yes, I agree that that's a problem, but got to tell you, and I'm going to share it with you in just a moment, I believe you need to start with the right structure, figure out what it is, and then whoever is the business leader, in this case, you guys that are listening to this, you hand to your sales team leader, which I'll get to that point in just a second, a profitable structure, and all they have to focus on is number of sales and not worry about the money and the break-even point. Just focus on delivering on productive numbers and everything takes care of itself. The break-even, the profitability, the whole lot. Not recovering all your VPA up front. Oh, it just makes me cringe when I hear that. Not getting people to pay for advertising. That's just like schoolboy stuff. It means that your company's just in a shitty construction anyway. That you're actually building it around VPA, getting vendors to pay for advertising. Advertising is so one-dimensional, but I'll just leave that alone. No provision for working capital. Well, I just shared you with that one. Yes, I think you can go in too lean, but I also like the idea of back against the wall with loads of energy and just an idea of just make sales and spending the least amount of money. I mean, because any idiot, any fool can throw money at a problem. It takes intelligence to figure out how to make money without spending money. I am absolutely cringe when I hear that phrase, when someone says you've got to spend money to make money. What a load of horse shit. Yes, there might be some money that needs to be spent, but you don't have to do that. You can use creativity, you can use intelligence to figure out how to get people to contribute money and spend the least amount, thus creating or making the business even more profitable. And I can go over so many good relationships I have with successful business owners who have been relatively frugal in throwing money at the problem. And that has been very much a large part of the secret of their success. Too many commission structures. Yeah, I agree with that. You should only have one, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. Spending more than you earn, well, that's fairly much straightforward. Too scared to ask questions. Yes, I agree with that one in particular. And driven by sales, not profit, of course. Turnover vanity. That's when we're more focused on the amount of turnover that we're bringing in rather than how profitable a business is. And it's only just this week with one business leader, we've actually put on notice a whole bunch of salespeople. He was reluctant to do this for some period of time. We've now reached a point where some of those people are clearing out, and I'm grateful for it because the break-even point is dropping and we're putting energy into the right people. And as I said to them, you're going to make probably less sales, but make them more profitably with the move that you've made. So I'm only too happy to agree to that. So let's just have a look at one of the things. Let's just quickly have a look on this recording at what I call my 9 steps to agency business success. Doesn't matter whether you're a startup, doesn't matter if you're medium size and you've been in there for some time. Take these on board, pick up the phone, give me a call. I can expand on how you should approach these, and you are well and truly on the way to succeeding as a real estate agency, and you'll never look back. The first step I say is just get contextually educated. I know that, when I moved from being a salesperson even in the salesperson's level, the lights really switched on for me when I totally understood that it was about listing like a maniac to the point of excess. When I looked at the average real estate agent, they were doing somewhere like, everyone thought that 1 a week or 4 properties a month was fantastic. And I started to look at how I could do 10, 12, 15, and what was the optimum level. And in doing so, I got to a space where I was doing 10 sales a month. When I moved into the role of sales team leader, I thought it was simple. I thought it was just like, well, it can't be that hard. It's just got to be like, running my own show and everyone understands it. I was so wrong. And I had to go back and get educated again as to how it works. And there was 3 levels of education that I went through over a period of time. The first was just how to run a small business, an income model, money in plus or minus expenses. Yes, we all think that's going to equal profit, but quite often it can equal a loss if you're not paying attention to it. So to me, knowledge is power, and it's the perfect substitute for experience. You might have been pioneering aspirations, but rest assured there aren't many things you're about to do in business at this stage, at least, that haven't been done before. So I just say, be a sponge. Just get hold of anything you possibly can, good and bad. Don't just focus on those that have done well. Have a look at those that have maybe gone belly up. When I heard that statistic that 90% of businesses don't make it to 5 years, I was horrified. And I remember punching the sky when we got there. And I know a lot of you have gotten there, so that's okay too. So I just go attend every event, get yourself to CREAM, get yourself to STEAM, figure out how to do it, because your eyes will be open. It'll give you an entirely new perspective. And if it does nothing else, it will teach you, as I said to Andrew Coronis all those years ago, where do you want to end up? And at least you'll know to say, this is how I want the business to look in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and then work your way back from it. You need to also have a clarity of the overall objective. So I say, begin with the end in mind. Far too often, salespeople merely make the transition to leader without much thought of just leading and having the title. And they think, I'll just keep making sales and everything will be okay. How often have I sat with leaders who are just looking at me saying, I just can't keep making the sales here. I thought I'd be out of it. They thought just by moving into the owner, they could move out, but they hadn't thought to replace themselves back here. So you have to get a total understanding of how you want it to look. It's far easier to write the vehicle back on course when you know where you're going to than it is to just get in and go, well, hell, let's just see where we end up. So you've got to have a clarity of the overall objective. Do you want to have a big business? Do you want to have a medium-sized business? Are you building that business just to sell it? And I can talk about many owners that I've had that have just shared that with me. I just want to build it to a point that I want to sell it. I've had some great leaders that have a total equity mindset, and they understand, and I can often share, I can share this with you right now, that, there's more money than you could possibly imagine in buying and selling businesses for those of us that are clever enough to figure out how to go about it. Number 3, articulate your strategy. Make sure that every single person inside the entity that comes on board with you is clear around strategically where you're going. Be direct and keep it very transparent. For me, it was always about victory, service, growth, and I made no apologies for the fact that we were moving to a bigger model. I made it very clear that I was moving out of the front line to make way for the people that were working in the organization. And I said that my position, as is every other person's position in this entity, is always perpetually up for grabs. So you decide the career path that you want. And I gave them an understanding of where the business was going. Number 4, and by no means the least important, is set a lucrative structure. Without doubt, the key to prosperity is how the company and its people are remunerated. how you structure it. And before you jump to conclusions, and so often I see leaders make the mistake of saying, well, I can only structure my business with limitations because of how all the other businesses are structured. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Just have a look at what they're doing. They're not making profits. They are in a business where the first person to be remunerated is salespeople. A lot of these structures are such that the salesperson can be profiting whilst the business is going backwards. Please talk to me. Build a structure that is profitable first. If you build a business and you know how much of every dollar that is brought in by that company is for the company to keep, you are well and truly on the way forward. You know, we say, yes, the first goal is survival, but beyond that, then it moves to profit. This includes ensuring that profit is made in structure for growth, security, and of course, lucrative profits. You've got to have money to channel back in to make the overall business secure. You've got to have money to channel back in for it to continue to grow. And as I'll share with you over the coming weeks, any business that's not in growth is in decline. So that needs to be settled out as well. Number 5 is leadership in and on the business. So often I see this, and with very few exceptions, there is, you know, maybe a solo operator. But even with the solo operator, I say the sooner you search for your 2IC, the better. Batman wouldn't have made it without Robin. You need someone working in the business. This, of course, is the sales team leader managing and leading the productivity and the progression of that productivity. You know, a property manager leading that business around growth, retention, yeah, and good income coming into it, and of course building it equitably so that property management business is working correctly. So you need people that are working in the business, but you also need someone who's working on the business from the outside. That, I hope, is you who is watching this particular presentation right now. So everyone accepts that growth comes from working on the structure of the company, but how do you get away from driving the productivity in the business? And if you work on it, won't the in part suffer? Yes. If you extract yourself out and start working on it, and you've been an integral part of working in it, then it suffers. Something has to give. You can't do it 3 ways. You can't be leading the sales team. You can't be managing the administration and looking at the overall structure whilst trying to list and sell properties at the same time. So if you want to stay there, that's fine. Then you need to find someone who's going to work on your business. But you need someone in and on. Number 6, perpetually, always be recruiting. One of the things that drives me absolutely bloody nuts, and I know some of you are listening to this, Steve, Justin, please pay attention. You've always open. You are always hiring. It's a simple analogy, guys. Don't frighten yourself out of the equation here. If I had 6 salespeople and all of them could bring in $500,000 plus in gross commission incomes, how many of those 6 do you want? Now, of course, the correct answer is all of them. So please understand that you are always looking, you are always hiring, you are always nurturing. I'm the first to say, hire slow, fire fast. But to actually say that that's something that I do when I need employees, this is nuts. It's like anything. The moment you need salespeople, you will make concessions around a whole raft of things because now you're employing out of need rather than want. You always want good people, but don't step back and wait until you need them. So take the proactive approach on this. Recruitment is the same as prospecting. The moment you are doing it out of need, you are in trouble because you're desperate. Yep. And there's a real estate owner, you're always, always, always hiring. This just goes without saying. Yep. And let's face it, the least manageable resource in any business is people. And in our business of real estate sales, real estate property management, it's the primary resource. So you've got to be constantly nurturing, and you're always hiring. The next one is constantly training for consistency. Oh boy. And I know that this is my business, and we're waiting for him to say this. Well, wake up and smell the roses. I can actually tell you, I can point to so many leaders. I've got one right now where they have the best part of $1 million leaking from their business because salespeople are not recovering this in marketing investment. And as a consequence, the business is paying it out. Now that's bad enough. And yes, we need to look for a remedy. It's compounded as a problem even further when I say as little as 3 or 4 years ago, the reverse was true. So they had a very small amount of money in delinquency and they were recovering most of it. Why the change? Because as a company and as a team, they thought they'd heard it all. Please understand how training works. Training, not teaching, not learning, training. You see, the first part of when someone sees something new, that is learning, and that's exciting and palatable, and we all like that. What we tend to say is, I've heard that or seen that before. The second stage of training is the monotony routine part. Now, you can confidently say when you've been through the monotonous part over and over and over again, well, I know that. The third phase is doing it. And once you're doing it, this feeds, in turn, the learning, this feeds the training. But training is the same as if you were an athlete training for a marathon. You don't just run 40 Ks and say, I'm okay. You build up to it and you're constantly training and training and training. You have to get your people to understand that it is a natural part of their week. What I did inside my company, what I'm openly inviting you to do, it was very simplistic. There are only 2 compulsory. Everyone must turn up at the same time and participate. Number 1 was the sales meeting on a Tuesday, which never degenerated to a training meeting. It was all about monitoring results and actions that led to further results. And Fridays between 9 and 11, they were all required to come in for sales training. These were the only 2 compulsory things, and the rest is history. I know it works very much the same in every successful business I've been associated with or have had something to do with. The next one is manage functionality. There's so many things inside a real estate business that are repetitive, and you need to build systems and processes around that. You need to be looking always for greater efficiencies, even if it means outsourcing these stuff, sometimes to offshore personnel, getting an understanding around it, documenting all of that functionality, simply moving it into what we call the red, black, blue, and now green. But you need to pay some attention to functionality. Now, if this is not your disposition, if you're not a person who is given over to that type of functionality, getting involved in logistics and administration, that sort of stuff, find someone who is good at that and empower them to take it over. This will, again, revolutionize your business. But I can move it down into functionality into so many things. Again, I know I alluded to this earlier, but I always remember Andrew Corona saying to me many, many moons ago, when he was first going in, he said, I want to run a big business. And I said, well, how big? He said, big as it gets. And so it's no surprise to me that he's doing that just now, and they just continue to grow. And I said, well, okay, so can I tell you where to start? He said, where? I said, well, name one company that you can think of, big company, that doesn't have a board of directors. And he said, I can't. I said, that's where you start. He goes, but we're only a small business. I said, that's where you start. You said you want to have a big business. You need to act like a big business from the get-go. If you leave this to you, what you need to understand in a corporate model is you can't do it alone. And you need to be surrounded by a team of people, and all of those people need to have specific functions, specific understanding. And again, the rest is history. The other thing I said to him, he said, well, what about equity around that? I said, well, what do you want to do? What would you rather own? 100% of your fly-blown fish and chip shop operation is what I said to him with his current real estate office, or a very small percentage of BHP. He said, oh, a small percentage of BHP. I said, there it is. So you need to understand that you've got to bring people in on a vested interest. As my father used to say to me, still does, because he's still kicking, but he always said, you know, if you're going to bring someone into your business, make sure that they are sharing the same risks that you are. And I think that's just so very important. And last but by no means least, and I did allude to this earlier, master marketing. Marketing, not to be confused with advertising, permeates every facet of a real estate business right now. Every real estate transaction permeates our everything through to recruitment, permeates everything through to bringing new prospects in, permeates, you know, how we create longevity with our clients. Everything's about the perception that you can create out there. Master it, become a great marketer, understand how it works. I can count unbelievable examples. You know, one of my most admired marketer, who I'm also bringing into my very own training company, is Justin Madron. Now, I referred him to Coronas. He's just redone their brand, but I can tell you from the moment he first did their brand as a brand architect, their business just catapulted into the stratosphere. So the more you can invest and get an understanding of how marketing works in and around the business, the quicker you're on the way. If you want a copy of all those 10, please feel free to give me a call. I'd be more than happy to share those back with you. Again, I ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Any commentary, any questions you have, if you want a consultation, it doesn't cost anything to jump on the phone and have a talk with me. You can contact me, Mark with a K, at corporatemanager.com.au, or you can telephone me +61 410 9562. Hang on, I've forgotten my number. So my number is +61 410 592 165. And I look forward to seeing you in a fortnight's time when we jump on for CREAMstream for a second time. Thanks for listening.